This is a war with a purpose. This is a war with an end.
We're not talking here about a withdrawal, we're talking here about a transition to Afghan-led security responsibility.
The next stage of transition, Tranche 3, will be announced soon.
We may well get there in advance of 2014.
I have no reason to think that it shouldn't be possible to finish the job sooner rather than later.
While that's good, it's not quick enough.
It is time we brought the troops home safely, and we would like to see that withdrawal from Afghanistan start straight away.
We want them to come home with a success under their belt, not a failure.
The war in Afghanistan has been a failure on just about every level.
The war is lost. It's just holding the line.
Bin Laden is dead. Most of al-Qaeda's senior leaders have been killed or captured. There have been fewer attacks by insurgents than in the same month in the previous year.
The Afghan National Security Forces are strong enough, and they're getting even stronger the way the transition is moving forward.
It's all about the Prime Minister wanting to get this off the table as an election issue at next year's federal election.
It would be a shameful thing if after nearly 12 years of deployment in Afghanistan and the loss of more than 30 Australian lives, this mission were foreshortened for reasons of domestic political convenience for the Labor Party.
The requirements of the new international strategy led to the adoption of the timeline, not the other way around.
There will be a mission beyond that, and that'll be to keep training the Afghan forces.
So it'll be the real test now as to everything that we've done over the past 10 years, whether the sacrifice has been worth it.
The 32 families who grieve on a daily basis are not doing that grieving in vain.
We have a strategy, a mission and a time frame for achieving it. We are serving our national interest in Afghanistan.
So I think a popular move, unquestionably a popular move, so popular it probably demanded a pre-election timetable. But the curious thing about this was that the Julia Gillard's speech was billed as a significant speech, and that's because she was announcing a withdrawal when people were expecting 2014, came in earlier, and yet she added this qualification. Have a look.
I don't like to argue with members of the media, but I would seek to remind you that in November, in my address to the Parliament about Afghanistan, my most recent update to the Australian Parliament, I did say in that speech that timing to complete transition in Uruzgan was not yet decided, but that it could well be completed before the end of 2014.
So I seem to be saying there now that this is not a big deal, and yet both Bob Carr and Stephen Smith, I understand it, had to make clarifications to our allies and to point out that the timetable is still in accordance with the agreement that we'd signed up to.
I think it might be a situation where the spin got a little bit out of hand and ahead of the story. If you look back at what Julia Gillard actually said in the speech, she didn't say, I have taken an explicit and unilateral decision to withdraw Australian troops 1 year early. She didn't say that. She was saying that she was confident that this meeting she's going to in Chicago in May will result in an international timetable which would allow troops to be brought home along that timeline, and that mid-2013 would be a key milestone, etc., etc. But it was widely interpreted as bringing our troops home 1 year early, and that meant that then the Defence Minister and the Foreign Minister had to quickly clarify to allies and other nations with troops in Afghanistan that no, you know, we're still in line with the international timetable, we're not doing anything unilateral, we haven't made a unilateral decision. So I think it was a situation where the spin around her speech kind of got out of hand and ahead of the actual policy announcement.
Because it wasn't just the media. Every contributor to that debate assumed that this or took this as an earlier withdrawal.
Yeah, and the spin did get it out of control, but the spin was created by the government. It was senior government officials who, previewing the speech the night before it was delivered, gave the message that this was about bringing forward the timetable to bring troops home. Now, the government had always said, as Julia Gillard pointed out there, that they'd had a qualification in everything that she'd said, that Stephen Smith had been saying and others. There was always this sort of qualification or earlier. This speech gave a little bit more definition to what or earlier meant, but it really didn't take the actual on-the-ground situation in Afghanistan any further than what we knew before. I think the government wanted a bring the troops home earlier story out there. It got one, but then it had trouble sort of putting together the message after the fact.
Internationally.
Well, domestically and internationally. Right. A lot of journalists came away from that speech quite confused about what exactly the government was saying, because there were some mixed messages in what Julia Gillard was saying. And this is a problem this government has all the time, of trying to get a clear message out. It very rarely succeeds.